Good evening, everybody. Most welcome to the Macau Ricci Institute Forum titled Representing the Tropical Hortus, Natural Knowledge in Michael Boym's Flora Sinensis, 1656. My name is Jarosław Duraj, and I will be chairing today's forum. I have a great pleasure to welcome Dr. Esther Szilak from Hong Kong, originally from Hungary. I will introduce her briefly. Let me start from something traditional Polish, Hungarian. There is a saying, Pole and Hungarian are like two brothers. We have a saying at least in Poland. Huh? and you have it in Hungary. So, and here the paradox is that the Hungarian and Pole are sitting also today, kind of opportunity to focus on historical topic related to the person of Michael Boym, the greatest, the most eminent Polish, Hungarian, if you like, missionary in China, who contributed hugely to Chinese studies, and his tragic, so to speak, in a sense, failure of the mission to support the Ming Dynasty, falling Ming Dynasty in China, is an important chapter in the history of the Christian presence in China, and is worthwhile to study, to reflect about this personality. Many more things probably in the future will come up, as still surprisingly, after so long time, we are still discovering certain sources. Like recently, I heard that somebody discovered the copy of the document Ratio Eorum, one of the texts that was considered to be, one of the texts of Boym that was considered to be lost, and the document was found in Antwerp, in the archives in Antwerp. So hopefully the future research will show us, will give us opportunity to do more research on him. But today we want to focus on Flora Sinensis, which was one of the most important texts where he presents for the first time the Flora Sinensis. So today's speaker is Dr. Esther Szilak. She is a postdoc research fellow at the Jiao Tsung Ai Academy in Sinology at Hong Kong Baptist University. She holds a PhD degree in art history of the University of Hong Kong. Her work was, her interdisciplinary research focuses on 17th century Polish Jesuit Michael Boym's contribution to knowledge transfer from China to Europe, based on his illustrations, which range from botanical to medical and geographical to zoological. Previously, before studying for PhD, she also did research, did her BA at Sapienza University of Rome and her MA at Roma Tre Università, where she specialized in 17th century Italian Baroque art. Here we have art specialist, art historian with us, and we're very happy to listen to her expertise in interpreting the Flora Sinensis. Please give a hand to welcome our speaker.
Thank you. Did you know that Michael Boym's grandfather was Hungarian?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't choose Michael Boym for my PhD because he was Hungarian. I am Hungarian, but it's an interesting story. And anyway, just about the Hungarian-Polish friendship. Thank you so much for having me here. Today I would like to introduce Michael Boym, a Jesuit missionary from Poland who traveled to China 2 times in the 17th century. While I am sure many of you know him, today we will visit his life and work from different perspectives. So thank you again for having me. And then let's see if Michael Boym, also known as Bu Mige, this was his Chinese name, was born in 1612 to a wealthy family in Lviv, then part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. His father was physician to Sigismund III Vasa, King of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania, and the family was powerful, being among the most important traders of Lviv. Here you can see the portraits of his grandparents, Jerzy Paweł Boym and Jadwiga Sniowska, painted on the outside of the family chapel in Lviv. Today, Ukraine, that time part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. It was quite interesting when I visited Lviv and I was talking to the guide who was touring us around in the center of the city. She was saying, "Oh, and you know they had a missionary in their family, and he sent back kiwi seeds to the city at that time, and there is no." Boym never mentioned the kiwi itself, but actually he's always talking about seeds and plants. So it's quite interesting how things change over time, but somehow even a local tourist guide still knows what he was doing. So here you can see on the photo the other side of the chapel. So on the back side there are these two beautiful portraits which are very well conserved, seeing that they are outside. And this is the main entrance of the family chapel. It's at the main square just next to the cathedral. It's a beautifully elaborated entrance and chapel, which shows the family wealth and importance in the city. And the portrait here is Boym's father, Paweł Jerzy Boym, that you can see. At a young age, as the story tells, after a terrible sickness, Boym survived, made him decide to become a missionary with the goal to travel to the Far East. He became a Jesuit in Krakow on 16 August 1631, and he obtained priesthood 10 years later in 1641. He constantly sent letters to the Roman headquarters to be sent on a Far East mission. Only after many requests he could leave Europe finally in 1643. He traveled on a Portuguese boat that stopped for over a month in Caffraria, today's Mozambique. There he wrote the first written document we have from him so far. About this letter and what it contains, a recent publication came out in British Academy Proceedings. It's a book about the cultural history of the pineapple. So if you are interested in that, I can share more details of the book later. Later, he arrived via Goa to Macau, where he taught at the St. Paul's Jesuit College before traveling to Hainan, where he established a small mission. When the island was conquered by the Manchus, Boym left to Tonkin in China. In modern days, this is northern Vietnam. He came back to Macau, where he made his solemn 4 vows on 15 August 1649. The photo that you like, the image, the work you can see here, it's a later work from the 19th century, but it shows the facade of the St. Paul's Church. In 1649, Boym was sent by the Canton-based Vice-Provincial of the China Mission, Alvaro Samedo, on a diplomatic mission to the court of the Yongli Emperor, the last ruler of the Ming Dynasty, who still controlled parts of southwestern China. And here I would like to take a minute and reflect on Boym's travels within China. As we can notice, his travel happened only in the southern regions of China, and the Manchus were coming from the north. So this geographical composition of southern and northern China within the Jesuit order and how they moved within this new political realm seemed to matter. At the southern Ming court, Boym joined his confrere, Andreas Koffler, another very interesting figure. Most of the time ignored. They were now in tow to evangelize the escaping Ming court and their last ruler, Emperor Yongli. Then in 1651, Boym left to China to come back to Europe as the representative of the Southern Ming court, an often regarded unfortunate mission for Michael Boym, as at the same time Martino Martini was on his way to Europe as the representative of the new ruling dynasty, the Qing. And here you can see the works that we have from Boym during his life and posthumous. The first letter is what I mentioned, is the first written document we have from Boym. This is a letter that he sent from Mozambique, and it's conserved at the Jesuit archive in Rome at Arsi. It's a 7-page long description of Mozambique, the people there, the life, what they eat, how they trade, the social dynamics, also about slavery he writes, and he also included 5 watercolors, which are quite important, especially for me, because my main focus was on the images that can be found in Boym works, which are over 100 throughout his works. And these watercolors are quite beautiful as well. The second work that you can see is the brief relation. This was published in Paris, and it contains Boym's description of his stay at the Southern Ming court, the different members of the family of the emperor's family, and the conversions that they managed with his confrere Andreas Koffler. So that's a historical document, but what is quite important for many of us, or for me at least, is that in this brief relation he already lists out the books that he was planning to publish later on, and among them the Chinese map, the Flora Sinensis, which will come later on, and so it's a list that we know he couldn't make it happen because his life ended much sooner, but on the other hand, it's a very good reference for us to know, because we also know which are the missing parts that we can look at when it comes to archives. The third image shows the Chinese map of Boym, which is a beautiful work. It remained in manuscript. It held at the Vatican Library, and it has one big map of China. That is what you can see here, with an ad lectorum, an introduction, and there are some images around the map. And after that, there are 50 maps that follow. They follow the Ming provincial maps, but in most of them there are always drawings and images that sometimes they are like unique, other times they reappear in later works, for example in Flora Sinensis. And then Flora Sinensis, I showed it with yellow because I'm going to talk about it more later. And then there is this Clavis Medica, which is a posthumous publication from Nuremberg. It was published in 1686. And this is important because it shows that Boym was the author of this book. When I say author in terms of European terms, because actually in most of his medical works are translations and collections of Chinese books. But this is also a very important work we have from him. After an arduous overland journey, Boym arrived in Rome in December 1652, having managed to publish in Paris his first book, The Brief Relation, that I mentioned, and together with Andreas Cheng, who was his Chinese travel companion that the emperor gave him, Boym remained patiently in Rome, awaiting for papal audience for 3 years. Actually, he was not only in Rome, he was moving around. So far, what we know, he moved within Italy, Loreto, Pisa, probably Florence, but he was also most of the time in Rome. And finally, in 1655, Alexander VII finally received him and consigned him a formal reply that he could bring back to the Ming throne pretender. During this time, Boym worked tirelessly on the books he planned to publish, the list that we have from him in The Brief Relation. And so, mission accomplished, Boym immediately set sail for China on a Portuguese ship. And on this Portuguese ship, there were other 8 Jesuits with him, among them the Belgian Philip Kapper that you can see on the slide. His name appears at Clavis Medica, and actually his name is often reappears when it comes to the works and books that Boym was carrying with himself while traveling, because he won't manage to go back to China. He will die of exhaustion in the northern part of Vietnam, like today northern part of Vietnam. And so most probably the books he had ended up in Philip Kapler's hands. So he will be a very interesting figure to manage his so-called estate after his death. And here is the Flora Sinensis, his major work, and the work which actually from that list got published during his life in Vienna in 1656, is one of the first European natural history books about China and its region. In the introduction, Boym presents China as a fertile land where trees and plants always blossom, and he wrote, I quote, "The kingdom of China is the compendium of the world, or a ring. This is the gem of the world. You will find more precious things than in the rest, so to speak, of the world. In the southern part, the heat is most intense, where all the fruits of India happiness come from abundantly, the palm nut, banana, mango, and pineapples, among others. In the northern part it has grape, fig, chestnut, different kinds of nuts and apple, pear of all kinds." And then later he adds, "It must be admitted that whatever is found elsewhere in part, it can be found here. So much so that it can be said this is the kingdom rather than the Roman Empire." And here the quote ends. The book reflects Boym's interest in Chinese soil, cultivation techniques, available fruits and spices. Beside this, it also functions as a visual representation of plants and spices that are cultivated in tropical climates in the southern territories in China. And now let me reiterate the very idea of what and how Boym contributed work to early modern natural history. In fact, he was unfortunately representing the wrong dynasty when he was in Europe. His map about China, the Magna Carta, the one we just saw, was just ready once Martino Martini's Novus Atlas Sinensis was published. And in Flora Sinensis, we have native but also transplanted plants, then also animals. So it is too much of a mix to appreciate it beyond the nice publication. Here I would like to tap in. So as Yaroslav mentioned, and I brought up this here, because through my research and through my work, I'm trying to find the other perspective in Boym works, and especially focusing on his work in natural history, where his contribution is important, and the very fact that his diplomatic mission failed, we can look and we should look more into the work that survived and see how that matters in the evolution of early modern natural history. So that's why now I'm shifting towards something more of an interdisciplinary part when talking about Flora Sinensis. Here I would like to tap into the transplantation processes, the world of trade and science, transcultural knowledge transfer, and finally pseudo-hothouses in early modernity. In markets, Boym visited in Goa, in Macau, and he could have even Jakarta, if he would have went, show the world rich of exotic goods and fruits that had a market value. So the way to find the historical importance of Boym is by looking at the local marketplaces that was in the same time exotic but also valuable to him. And again, I want to mention, as Yaroslav is also mentioned, that Boym was from a very wealthy family. They were trading, so he grew up in an environment where trading was part of their everyday life. But also his father was a physician, so in that sense, medical knowledge was a very important part of his education. And so when looking at what was available at marketplaces, these are the eyes that he was, or the lenses that he was using, and how he was collecting the material that later on he put it into his works. And now let us give a closer look at one of the transplanted fruits, the pineapple. Here we can see the image of the pineapple represented in three forms. So this is the pineapple and the description of it in Flora Sinensis. You can see that in the book there are overall 23 etchings. They are representing fruits, plants, spices, and animals. Usually the layout of the page is there is one page of image, and on the other page there is the description of the image. And then he puts the name in Chinese characters on the image, and they are transcribed in Latinized form next to the image. In the description, most of the time he writes about the location, the cultivation, the harvest, the usage, and the value. And so now let's go back to the image of the pineapple. The pineapple laid horizontally on the top of the page, and underneath a pineapple ready to be consumed. Finally, the whole plant growing from the soil, which was a unique feature botanists admire in this fruit, as it was not growing from a tree as most fruits. Boym specified in the text next to it that it is cultivated in different southern provinces in China, such as Canton, Yunnan, and Hainan Peninsula. And here I still go back to the characteristic of the plant, that it grows from the soil. The very fact that it's not growing from a seed, which is in biblical terms was quite important for the Jesuit and for the evangelization of their mission. It was something that shocked them on one hand, but also made them admire of this fruit. And obviously the shape made it quite outstanding in contrast to the other fruits. And when it comes to the market value or the everyday usage of the pineapple, it's quite interesting that Boym puts in the middle of the page this pineapple which is ready to be eaten. It's still how we can buy it on the streets, like maybe in Thailand and not in Macau and Hong Kong, but when you buy it is still how it is cut. So it's quite interesting that his knowledge is on one hand like about natural history, but also very close to everyday life. And when it comes to like questioning that, like why he did that, we can think of how Jesuits needed support, financial support, and through their work, through their scientific work, through their publication, they could find supporters among the European courts, aristocracy. So when Boym thinking of valuable goods like the pineapple, it was something could raise someone interest when it came to supporting the Jesuit, but also investing into overseas trades. He said that it's cultivated in the southern provinces of China, just such as Canton, Yunnan, and the Hainan Peninsula. He wrote that it is originally from Brazil, and also that it can be found in India and Cape Town. They ripe in July to August in China, while at the Cape and India from February to March. As it's possible to see, he emphasized these exotic fruits look like the pineapple is cultivated in hot climates such as the southern territories on China. So here I am showing you the idea of like the world climate map, and we can see the India, the southern territories of China, which belong the sub-equatorial zone. And here, just as in Africa, just as in Brazil, the pineapple grew abundantly and they were transplanted in a very quick fashion. While to Europe, the image, like the fruit itself, was not available till the 18th century. They could only consume basically the fruit via images. So that's why, for example, when we look at this pineapple, this was one of the few images how Europeans could know about the existence of the fruit. They had no other way at this time and for another 50 years to see it, even in dried form, because the travel was so long. And because of the climate, the colder climate in Europe, they started to develop in the Netherlands and in England the hot house system. So by the early 18th century, they managed to cultivate the very first pineapples, which are quite precious. But as you can imagine, obviously the taste had to be quite different. So this is very interesting, I think, when we are talking about pseudo hothouses, because for colonial dynamics, basically they could use these territories to cultivate a fruit that in other means did not reach Europe. And here we need to go back in time as we follow Boym's route, leaving Europe in 1644, spending longer time in Mozambique, at that time was called Cafraria. We can find this image, these watercolors, in the letter that he sent from there. So the letter that I mentioned that is at the Jesuit archive in Rome contains 5 watercolors of the water lily, the hippopotamus, the anacardium, and the pineapple. You can see these watercolors on the screen. Besides being beautiful, they are also the very first images of pineapples in Africa we have so far. But let's remain at the topic. Next to the pineapple, Boym wrote notes, and one of them says the following. A Chinese man painted these and told me that many are found in the kingdom of China. Therefore, Boym already knew when in Mozambique that this fruit is cultivated in China. By traveling through different places such as Mozambique, Goa, and China, he was able to experience in person that all these places shared a climate that was good to cultivate the fruit. And also, just we can imagine that a Polish Jesuit on a Portuguese ship arrives to Mozambique and he meets a Chinese who will make the drawings or the watercolors to him while he is heading to India first and China. So when we are talking about the world is global, the world was obviously global already at that time, because in Mozambique seemed everything was there. Describing it is hot or using the word southern are all words that today we know as relevant for tropical climates. And now I go into more something that is not about Boym, but more about the historical text that we have about the pineapple in Chinese sources. So now I would like to reflect on how Chinese got access to this fruit and their southern territories were ideal for their cultivation. Above, I showed the example of the pineapple, but we can also add the mango, the sugar apple, or the cashew. A recent study on the spread and impact of American fruit trees in the Linyang region of China from the Ming Dynasty to the Republic of China by Anhao Liu and Shengjiang Ling and Ping Bao provides relevant data to this. You can see that the Linyang region, the one that is shown with light blue on the map, in the article refers to the provinces Michael Boym listed for pineapple cultivation. It is the southern and hot part of China. The study accesses historical sources to see how often the transplanted fruits are mentioned throughout a period. There are two quotes which shed light how this fruit entered China. Quote starts, "The cultivated variety in southern China was first introduced by Portuguese missionaries to Macau, from where it spread to Hainan Island in Guangdong and later to Fujian and Taiwan around the mid-17th century." Quote ends. And then another quote, "The Portuguese brought pineapple to Macau, from where it spread to Guangdong and Hainan." This is from a document from 1617 on the cultivation of the pineapple on Green Island, Macau. And the novelty of these fruits meant attention and mentioning of them in local gazetters. In fact, this is what this table shows. Before 1842, the period I'm looking at, the pineapple was mentioned 42 times, but later on it declined because it became one of the many fruits losing its original novelty. Here we're asking what kind of information, data, knowledge could we possibly extract from these golden periods of novelty that later on fades when the thing becomes an everyday product. On the other hand, this painting by Andreas Beckmann shows a market style in Batavia. This is today's Jakarta, and here I have this beautiful painting, but I'm constantly thinking that probably similar marketplaces were also present in Macau. We don't have such a representative painting showing it, but also Macau was a similar trading hub at that time. So all kinds of exotic fruits are presented here, such as the areca nut, the coconut, the persimmon, the mango, jackfruit, star fruit, lychee, rambutan, durian, banana, and among them the pineapple as well. This painting is a testimony how by the 17th century native plants, transplanted fruits, and even a white Australian cockatoo can be found at the local market in Batavia. While a blurring process started where territories with tropical zone were able to cultivate similar fruits that became available at the different continents, Europe was still excluded of this, even though it played an important part in the transplantation processes themselves. In fact, at the time when people in Africa and Southeast Asia were consuming the newly transplanted fruit daily, their counterparts in Europe were only able to consume it through descriptions and depictions. The only way to make these exotic fruits their own was to develop the greenhouse technology with which they could create an artificial environment to grow these fruits. It was a big challenge, but learning from the tropical zones, the gardeners knew what kind of environment they had to create. Overcoming limitations of the local weather became an important tool for botanists in Europe in the 18th century. And here we can see the Vogue Garden in Cape Town. I would like to mention this because this was established in 1652 and it was the earliest botanical medicinal garden in the region, acting as a crucial refreshment station for passing ships and also to acclimatize plants before their transfer to Europe. Interestingly, the pineapple did not arrive in the Cape of Hope Town until 1680s, when it was brought over not from its native America, as had been the case with the earlier colonial transplantation, but from the island of Java in Indonesia. Its human transplanter was Georg Master, the former gardener to Andreas Kleyer in Batavia, who, as a midshipman of the Dutch East Indian Company, delivered the fruit to the governor of Cape of Good Hope, Simon van der Stel, on his journey to Europe. And the first examples were important historical successes and were valuable moments to depict them. The first pineapple was grown in a greenhouse near Leiden in 1658, and later gardeners succeeded in England and in France as well. The fruit is also incorporated into portrait painting as a symbol of prestige. And this is what you can see on the oil painting of Agnes Bloch and her family in their garden in Pfefferhof in 1694. Here also, as you can see, Charles II is presented with the pineapple that was grown in the royal garden. The pattern that we saw in Chinese gutteters is like what Europeans do on their own way here. They visually mention the pineapple due to its modernity, its value, as if it was a prize. Then I wanted to show this image that shows botanists at the historical Chelsea garden. On the left side, it is possible to see a little cloche protecting some species that needs warmer climate. So these are the first kind of hot houses that they developed. And what I presented here is a path that where interdisciplinary approach allows to connect visual culture, botany, and cultivation history. What we could see here is that before being able to develop a technology per se, the Europeans were collecting information what tropical climate meant for these fruits and which were the tropical points to create these artificial environments. On the other hand, we see how in territories like the Linyan region, the novelty of these transplanted fruits declined over time as they became more of an everyday fruit. And also interesting to note that these transplanted fruits to China arrived to Macau via the Portuguese. So the Chinese were beneficiaries of these plants. But obviously there are plants which were transplanted from Asia to America. So it was in both, this transplantation process went in both directions. So by looking at what was this transplanted fruit social value and the role they played in the cultural history gives possible access point to further connect different fields that could interact. And now I would like to add one more example from slide because this is somehow connected to Macau, and I was saying to Yaroslav that I will mention I will focus on Boym and Macau somehow. And that is why I find quite interesting this example of the turtle. So you can see three books here, or three presentations. The first is the map of Honan, where there is a turtle on the side. So this is from Manyakatai, the map, the Chinese map that remained in manuscript at the Vatican Library. These are the drawings that are usually around the provincial maps. The same turtle returns, but in a mirrored way in Flora Sinensis, which is the last smaller image. It's smaller only on this slide. Actually, it has the same format as all the other pages in Flora Sinensis, but there is the sumshu, which is running after the turtle, and that you can't see it here. But basically, we have this on the upper page of the etching, and lower there is a cobra, there is a snake. So on one page, Boym inserted 3 animals. And that's why you can see that this turtle is actually smaller, but it's the same turtle that he presented in Manyakatai. And in the middle, it's the Chinese source that actually he used. And so these are what you can see. And because Boym said that he saw the turtle in Macau, I thought this will be a very good example that is not a plant, but it's an animal, and it's present in Flora Sinensis and talk about today. So Boym informs the reader that he saw the turtle with his own eyes in Macau. And here I would like to expand that most of the things that he decided to include into Flora Sinensis probably saw with his own eyes. It doesn't mean he made the drawings himself, or it doesn't mean he saw the things in nature. It can be he saw them in marketplace, or he saw them somewhere. But they were valuable enough for him to include them into the selection that is in Flora Sinensis. In the same time, his appreciation of its cultural significance deepened as Boym gained familiarity with Chinese medicine. And here we can think of the clavis medica, because as he's recycling images, he's also recycling information. Sometimes even text is just slightly changed. Or, for example, the turtle in clavis medica, there are more than 200 kind of medicine for different illnesses. And there are 2 which contains parts of the turtle to be used. So in that sense, his approach to Chinese geography, to Chinese flora, to Chinese fauna, to Chinese medicine was quite holistic. The animal that was considered exotic in Europe raised his interest and made him include into his several book projects. It fitted into more than one. In fact, Boym wrote about the turtle in Flora Sinensis, drew it in Manyakatai, and finally its shell appears in clavis medica as an ingredient in Chinese traditional medicine. Whereas Boym had described the hippopotamus in a single place in Flora Sinensis, his notes on the turtle were dispersed across, or more precisely, originally fitted into almost all his natural history writings, what I mentioned. Michael Boym presented the turtle to his readers, and how this presentation changed from one book to another. So the context into which the turtle fits is broad. And for example, in Flora Sinensis, every animal is there for a specific reason, as every plant. So some of the value is for their use as materia medica. Other value derives from more a general cultural importance. All of this played into Boym's decision on what to include. The reason was not simplistic, as Boym writing shows, whereas others drew clear distinctions between exotica, valued for curiosity and rarity, versus useful things of straightforward practical value. Boym merged it all together. So for him, this was a single way of making sense of the word, a single metathesis. The turtle was a culturally charged and historically present animal in Europe and in China as well. This made it an obvious choice for Boym to incorporate it into his work. The animal was exotic, yet paradoxically also rather known in Europe. It was present in paintings and books and featured widely in decorative arts as well. It met both Boym core criteria, on one hand a wonder of natural science and in the other a tradable good for the market. The turtle was a perfect choice for both interests. The particular turtle that Boym picked out was a special turtle that was venerated within China, the green-haired turtle. Grows algae on its back as it can stay underwater for longer times than is typical. It was available in Hunan and Hainan, and as Boym reported, he saw it in person in Macau. So Boym was not only recycling the same images in the different works, but the text as well. And the image of the turtle is a copy from Yang Erzeng Tuhui Zongyi, where the animal is seen in the middle of the composition. Tuhui Zongyi was among the various Chinese sources that Boym deployed for his writing enterprise. And this is quite interesting because not long time ago, most scholars thought that he was making his own drawings, or the drawings that are in Flora Sinensis or in his work or in his other works are made by him, and were trying to qualify whether he was a good or talented drawer or not. But putting that on the side, he was not making the drawings ad vivum, so it's not that he saw the turtle and was making the turtle, the drawing about the turtle, as we saw, for example, in the pineapple that we have from Mozambique. There was a Chinese that he even credits that made the watercolor for him, or in this case, there is a Chinese manual that he is using to obtain a drawing or an image of the turtle that he presents as an image of within the field of natural history, and not referring that actually it comes from an artistic Chinese print. So that twist is quite interesting. And as you can see, he extracts a detail, so he extracts the turtle from the whole print. The other animals are omitted, and he's only using the turtle in his works. So the Toho Zongyi is an illustrated manual that was an integrate part of Chinese art history. It was among the many Chinese painting manuals published in the Ming Dynasty that were very popular, especially for the new collectors that wanted to learn about the important Chinese painting back in time, so they could cultivate themselves when engaging in social conversation about art. So this is the source that Boym used for his turtle. And this is not the only painting manual that he used. There are other ones that he used as well. So what is quite interesting that, as I said, he used an artistic source, and he presented it as a scientific image, so to say. And I would like to conclude it here. These were two examples, two very different examples within Flora Sinensis. As I mentioned, there are 23 etchings inside, but one page can contain more than one animal. And overall, there are 100 images in Boym works that we have so far. But as Yaroslav mentioned, a document that just came out recently, also one part of a missing map just was found last year. So it's still an oeuvre that some of the lacunas or some of the missing points might be filled out through archival research. Thank you for your attention, and now I think we have the Q&A, so I'll let you